Greetings, mind crafters, and welcome to another thrilling discussion today here on talking about the topic of there is a time for absolutely everything. And I have to tell you, the whole idea of this, um, concept, and lots of people talk about it. Wayne Dyer, one of my faves, he talks about it. I mean, lots of people talk about it. That there is a season, there's a time in the season for everything, and this takes me back to my youngest brother in law's wedding, which I wasn't actually even thinking about until just a few moments ago, when I was welcoming all of you. And the fact that I remember the talk at his wedding, the homily at his wedding, is pretty amazing because I'm a fab 58 and he's, I think, 52, just had his birthday actually. So they got married, I don't know, 30 years, I don't know, long time ago, two and a half decades anyway. So, Father Uncle Steve, my husband's uncle by love, also happened to be a priest, did this amazing talk about it. And it was so moving. Again, the fact that I remember it is telling because, after you've been around the block a few times and heard like a gazillion graduations, a gazillion wedding, talks, a gazillion, there's only a few that really usually really stick with you. And this was one of them. And it was just beautiful. And it's about how not only, life throws curveballs and all of that. And basically the whole lasagna noodle idea, it's ups and downs and ups and downs. And how really the best way to deal with it is to accept it and learn to roll with it. And part of that is, there are times when we are in survival mode. That's for reals, right? And there are times when we are at the top of the little lasagna noodles, is loving life, screaming from a mountaintop, everything that's going well, and how important it is to just kind of sort of accept that this is how it goes because we were put on this earth, as far as any of us know, really the main lesson here for all of us, regardless of where you come from or how much money you have or what religion are you, if any, emphasis on if any. And the fact is, we are all put on this earth to learn to love ourselves and each other better. And that isn't going to happen without without some contrast. I mean, it's just the facts. Everything's all easy breezy. Then we're not pushed to, sort of rise to our best selves. And this is just how it is. So I want to talk about that today and talk about what it means to sort of embrace the contrast. And as we know, quote unquote contrast, you can call that whatever you want, right? We can call that life's curveballs. We can call that Meshuggah or Mishugas, which is means in I think it's Hebrew, means craziness. The kind of life can bring with it, and we call it whatever you want to, but life presents its own challenges. You can label that however you want to, right? And it's sort of you know how we choose to look at this that can really make a gigantic difference. And I've talked about this before because when we're in it, when we're in the contrast, it's a super tough sell to say, oh, I'm going to grow from this, later. And you want to just do a double finger, up at the sky or at the trees or at the person or at the situation or whatever, especially on the spectrum of hard, right? So as we know in life, most things happen on a spectrum. Rarely are they just on one end or the other. So we can have, a splinter on our foot, which stinks, all the way to the other end where we lose a loved one via death or divorce or moving across the world or whatever. And we've got the whole, middle of, things that can happen. It's all contrast. And it's how we really choose to look at them that matters, because when we have this attitude of how could this happen to me, and how many times do we hear that? We hear it not only in reality, we hear it in movies, and that's sort of often scripted into different movies and books. And how did this happen to me? Or that's the thing, how did this happen to me? Why me? Why me? Why me? Well, when we look at it that way, in that that victim perspective, this is not what's going to work out best for us. It doesn't mean we shouldn't feel the pain and agony. Of course, we got to feel. To feel is to heal. We do, though, want to shift out of that place and hopefully arrive at a place of, no matter how hard it is, that life does not happen to us, as in, why did this happen to me? Life doesn't happen to us, life happens for us. And I'll share with you that it was quite a while ago at this point. But my workplace at the time, which I really loved, I have to say, I've had a good ride professionally all the way. I really have, all the way from right out of graduate school straight up through. I've had a pretty good deal. I mean, it's not perfect. That's not a word I use in my vocabulary anyway. Although I've had a good deal in all different spots and in different places along the East Coast. But anyway, this was a workplace a while back, and everything was going well there. And then I had some contrast with a few fellow colleagues, and it surprised me really. And it was, hurtful, and it was unsolicited, and it was just kind of, odd that it surfaced. And it was, as is mostly true with people's snarkiness and agendas. It was about them, and I think maybe some jealousy about maybe a project I was working on. I'm not really sure. Doesn't really matter. But at the time, again, this was quite a while ago, I thought, what the heck? Like, things are going so well, and the crew at this particular workplace socialized well and things like that. And I thought, what's going on with this? And now, there was, as we have talked about in the past, the dots connect. In that moment, I didn't get it because things were going so smoothly and so great, and and I didn't really, it didn't wasn't making sense to me. It didn't compute. And then now, when I look back with this particular issue, and what I think happened there was just a couple of people. I think maybe had a little jealousy about a project I was working on. Again, I'm not really sure because I didn't ask, but it seemed rather apparent that that was it. What came out of that was me rethinking, reevaluating, and then it kind of pointed me in a new direction with a new passion project, which was quite successful. So I look back at it, and none of this was ever said to those couple of people or anything. And they don't know this, though I ended up being grateful actually for that short term contrast and kind of some snark that came through because uh, it really ended up working out well for me. And again, they don't even know. I did this whole private thing. I was walking in the woods, and, it's like, asking and asking, put it out to the universe. Like, what is this about? I'm so happy here and everything's great. Like, what's up with these couple of pricklies that are stirring the soup? And so in the end, I ended up having a very, very successful thing happen out of that because I shifted gears. I changed my dance. And I'll tell you, one of my very best friend from growing up, those of you who read the 7 Days, my article from a couple of years ago, my rooftop friend, I have to give her credit for that because she's the one who says it constantly. Whenever we're kind of focusing on the behavior of others and how their behavior is affecting us, she says it to me. I can hear her voice in my head right now saying, okay, so and so's doing this, so and so's doing that. And you can swap out whatever your circumstance, whatever your contrast is. It doesn't make a difference. What she would say to you, what my rooftop friend would say to you, is you cannot control their behavior. You got to change your dance. You've got to change your dance. And in this particular situation, I heard her voice. And I'm sure we had tons of conversations during that because that's what we do. And I did change my dance again. These couple of pricklies, I don't think even are even aware to this day. I changed it up. And because of the contrast they presented to me with some short term discomfort, I ended up with a really successful project. So there you go. And I have a second example actually. And it's interesting because our youngest actually said this to me just 3 days ago. Uh, just a few days ago, I had a medical procedure on my left foot for reconstruction because I'm very active. And even though it's just sitting here, um, looking down at the splint on me, you can't help to wonder what's going on, right? And I'm grateful that this is my issue because couch potato issues are much worse. I've been running. I've done a marathon. I've pounded the heck out of my happy little feet, and now they're not so happy because they've developed bunions, which I used to think was gross old lady feet. But what it actually is if you've been, it doesn't have to be from running and all that, but it can be. Also, just not good shoes and things like that. But for me, it's definitely all the running and the marathoning and the skiing and everything. And I don't have one regret in the world, because if this is a small price to pay for having the wonderfully active outdoorsy life that I have. So that's it. But anyway, where I was going with that was our youngest said to me just 3 days ago, she said, "Mom, what if this is the universe trying to slow you down temporarily, trying to just slow you down?" And I thought, wow, because it's anybody who knows me knows it's really hard to slow me down, and I don't like being slowed down. It's not comfortable for me to be slowed down. I operate well at max capacity, and it's really been a contemplative experience for me so far. And so the other piece of this, with the idea of understanding when contrast is happening, which right now it's definitely happening for me. Also, the other example I share with you, and accepting it, which has not been easy for me, but right now sitting on this deck, I am, because I'm in my happy place doing podcasts anyway, and also realizing that there's a time and a place and a season, as Father Uncle Steve would say. There's a season. So Wayne Dyer talks about it too. That there's a time, like I was just saying about myself, there's a time for going full tilt crazy. And from my own example, because I'm in academia, I love the buzz. And we're coming up on this right now because it's mid-August. And we're coming up on the buzz of the semester starting. And the first day of school, and I have mostly first years, which I also love, or who I also love. I love the buzz of the first day of school. I also love graduation day. That's when our babies are all grown up, and I'm like, where'd that time go? So they're kind of like bookends. But the first day of school, there's something about the first day of school in New England with the gorgeous weather, and they have their new backpacks and their new clothes, and they're excited and nervous at the same time, and they're kissing their parents and their golden retrievers, and they're just, I just love the buzz of all of it. It's just so crazy. So there's a time for that, and there's a time I'm currently sitting here on the deck. I've got my crutches to the right of me, Giovanni, the golden retriever, to the left of me here for emotional support. My foot is wrapped up to my knee in a splint. I've got stitches, which I haven't seen yet because they're underneath all of it. And there's a time to rest. And that part's hard for me. But, this is part of the lesson for today, which I'm a work in progress with, that there's a time to go full tilt and there's a time to slow down. And there's a time for, for just, whatever those sort of polarized, places are. Time for celebration, and a time for really reflecting on loss sometimes. And all of it makes life rich. Again, it's a tough sell when we're in, the down part of the lasagna noodle. But right, there is all the seasons, and I guess I'm sitting here in New England right now, and I think about this in the fall because it is very metaphorical. It can sound cheesy, but it's super true. And for me, I wouldn't want to live anywhere that didn't have seasons. I love how the gorgeous fall in Vermont rolls into my favorite, which is winter, which rolls into mud season, which rolls into summer. And because, as they say, the only constant in life is change. And that is really the truth. So, with that said, I want to say that no storm lasts forever. And again, a fabulous 58. I've certainly been through enough in my life that I can understand. I am not the preachy type. Any of you who listen to the podcast regularly know that I'm just not into that. I don't like being preached at, and I certainly don't preach to anybody else. I'm just speaking straight from life experience that, no storm lasts forever. No storm lasts forever, no matter how bad it is. You take the biggest natural disaster and it doesn't last forever, right? And so the idea, once we become somewhat seasoned, and we can understand that the lasagna noodle thing, up, down, right, is just how it goes. And to realize that in the midst of the storm is that peace that we want so desperately, but also it's there. If you think about like a hurricane, right? The peace is in the eye of the storm. Stuff can be, well, literally with a hurricane, winds 100 plus miles an hour, whipping all around, and, just ripping houses apart and throwing cars around in the air and everything else. Yet in the eye of that hurricane, in the eye of that storm, there's complete peace. And if we look at that as a metaphor, we can do that too we can learn to do that. And it doesn't mean it just makes it all go away. It means that we're in acceptance that this is what's happening right now, no matter how hard it is. And we said that before. And I think I know that I've mentioned before, one of my favorite definitions ever of stress comes from John Kabat-Zinn. And John Kabat-Zinn says that stress is wanting the present moment to be something other than it is. Think about that for a second. Like right now my foot is wrapped up in a splint. I haven't seen the incisions yet, but there's stitches up and down. Um, and it's going to be 6 weeks where I don't have as you all know, I walk in the woods every single day with Giovanni. He's being so patient. Also, one of our daughters has been here taking him for walks, thankfully. But I can want that not to be true. That I have 6 weeks where I usually am running and walking, and in the winter I'm skiing, and I'm out. I do my whole prayer routine. I do my whole gratitude rampage thing out in the woods, and I can want that to be different. Today's only day 3, but that isn't going to be different. And so, the acceptance of this is how it is helping. I'm not going to say it's all, how do they say, roses and unicorns, whatever like that. I will say though, because I'm not wired for lies, that gratitude is my best friend in this, because I'm incredibly grateful that I was able to have this procedure done now in August, where the weather is good and it's actually primo in Vermont. I'm very grateful to have a flexible workplace with supportive colleagues, and I'm also grateful for technology, which I'm not often a fan of, because I think it was a double-edged sword, right? It can cause us to really get ripped out of the moment. But in this particular circumstance we're talking about, I'm able to keep quote unquote working. I love what I do, so I don't think of it as working, but I'm able to continue to do podcasts and write the Mindful Times newsletter, and um, do a lot of my planning. And I'm able to do it out on my back deck with a hot tea, surrounded by flowers, and the birds are chirping. And so it's really not all bad, even though I've got my crutches to the left of me and my foot is wrapped up to my knee. And so this helps me to deal with it a little better. That it'll be 5.5 more weeks before things are back to, I don't like the word normal, but back to where I can be out in the woods doing my thing, which I already miss very much. I'm in acceptance mode though right now, and also that I've got a wonderful husband who's doubling as a nurse and waiting on me hand and foot. So there we go with that example. And I guess lastly, what I'd like to say, because I'm trying to paint the realistic picture here. As you know, I'm super positive minded. I've been actively shifting out of um, the place of feeling stuck and trapped, which I don't do well with, into shifting out of, well, at least I'm on my back deck where I can feel freer than I would, trapped on a couch or something. And to realize also that when we're in the midst of this, whatever it is, contrast that is causing changes, or like for me right now, physical limitations, which is extremely hard for me actually, to realize that in the midst of what might appear to be misfortune, what might appear to be misfortune, there's really actually good fortune. There's really actually good fortune. And um, again, just using the leg example, because anybody's had, I think we've all been limited. When you've lived a certain amount, you've gone around the block a few times. We've all been physically limited at some points. And, whether it's just the flu, or it's something that's a 6-weeker like this, or something worse that's just systemic. And I just said to my husband, I just said that to him this morning. Thank goodness this is just a foot. I mean, feet are important, obviously, and for somebody as active as me, it's definitely affecting my lifestyle for the next 6 weeks. So I'm not trying to sound cheesy. I'm being as genuine as I know how to be, because that's all I know how to be. I am grateful on my knees, both healthy knees, that all it is a foot and not my brain or my heart or something systemic. And so it's important to really kind of shift out of that. It doesn't mean you don't give yourself a moment. I actually cried yesterday for a little bit, because I was just feeling stuck and trapped, and I let that go on for about 3.5 minutes, and then I climbed back into my gratitude place. And so the best way to ride this wave and be at peace with it is to just um, accept it and try your best to not dig the claws in and put up this resistance wall as hard as that can be. And really, uh, if all else fails, which is what I do, I go on a gratitude rampage for 17 seconds. And sometimes it can feel forced. I'm not gonna lie to you. Sometimes it can feel like, okay, push this, push this. But I tell you, if there's 17 seconds of throwing up everything you're grateful for, it's an immediate brain change. Even if when you started it, you were in a place of feeling a little sorry for yourself, you force yourself to just say that first thing and then just like word salad it. Just write out 17 seconds. And I'll tell you, I feel like a brand new penny and it changes my mindset for the entire day. And then that feeds right into the days after that. So that is pretty much it. To understand, have this awareness that contrast is happening. It's part of life. It's how we learn to grow. It's how we learn to love each other and how we learn to advance spiritually. Actually, I'll throw that in there too. My good friend who doesn't know it, Wayne Dyer, talks about this. He said whenever he's had some kind of like spiritual growth spurt, spiritual personal growth spurt, it's been precipitated by some kind of curveball, some kind of life event that set him into a spin. And that's just definitely true. So accept it, be at peace with it, run with it, grow from it. This is Kimberly Quinn signing off from my beautiful, beautiful back deck, for which I am so grateful. Have a mindful day.